Do you guys ever get the feeling that Konami doesn't like reptiles? Why else would they create an archetype that gives your opponent recovery from your deck? But hey guys, this is Tom Box. Welcome to MST.TV. Now, Ogdoadic, to say that it is a complicated deck is a bit of an understatement. It is the one deck that when you perform your actions, you give your opponent additional stuff, like using Zoha to get a free draw and a send from their hand, which is a pretty big deal for some decks. You also have free special summons from the graveyard by using Curse. You have Aleirtt letting them add back stuff from the graveyard. But anyways, as the title suggests in this video, we are going to be talking about the fatal misplays that this deck can perform, as well as a couple of chets. Like, honestly, these are legitimate chets if they were done intentionally, and if they can be proven to be done intentionally, as if there's a pattern going on with this now, I would say, yeah, it's a pretty dangerous game that you're playing. And I'm not trying to paint a target on, Ogdoadic's players' back, but there's a lot of things that they have to maintain a bit more than the opponent. And as a player playing against Ogdoadic, you need to know a lot of these cards to kind of break it all down. So that's why this video is here. We're going to be talking about the fatal misplays, and this time we're using the term correctly for the fatal misplay because these are legal things you can do, but they'll play you straight into the ground. And the chets are more or less procedural error minors, sometimes major. But do you guys know what is not a fatal misplay? Today's video sponsor, Frag. Frag Pro Shooter, one of the best shooter games of 2020. Designed for mobile devices and with more than 70 million players and 1 million active daily players, you can find a match within seconds. And there's awesome rewards if you guys join using the link at the top of the description. Now the rules are really easy. All you gotta do is destroy the enemy bunker as soon as possible. The first one to destroy the enemy's bunker wins. But how do you do it? Well, you collect characters, and with over 90 characters to collect, all with different powers and abilities, you guys can create your own deck to destroy the enemy bunker. Now each new version of the game will feature a new fragger. The last one that was featured was Zap Girl. She has the power to deploy a charge tower that not only slows down the enemy, but also zaps everyone around for constant damage. Outside of the main game mode, there's 3 other game modes that you guys can play: Payload, 2v2, or Street Frag mode. Personally, I like 2v2 more because I could team up with one of my friends or a random partner, choose 3 of my characters to create a total deck of 6 with my partner, and then you get to play against 2 other players, for maximum fun time. Now, I created a club in the game, and you guys can join if you're that. It's basically like a clan or a guild, and yeah, just look for MST, and you'll find me right there. There's also free rewards for you guys, only thanks to the link in the description, even if you have already installed Frag. You guys will get 1 golden chest, 500 gold coins, 50 diamonds, which is worth about a total of $6. So join today and play Frag Pro Shooter. We're gonna start with the fatal misplays first because it's less serious, and we can definitely improve the skill gap between the Ogdoadic players and the non-Ogdoadic players, so, better skill ceiling, better matchups. As for the illegal chets, we'll cover that at the end, because by the time you leave the video, I want you guys to have that stuff drilled in your head so that it doesn't become a problem with the upcoming events, alright? So, let's start with the first card, Zoha. This card, don't activate it versus Shaddoll, don't activate it versus Aleirtt, don't activate it versus Tri-Brigade, don't activate it in any deck that would benefit off of drawing one and discarding one. Like, it just gives them a free hand sculpt at worst, but at best for them, if they're playing Shaddoll and they've got Squamata, you turn their entire hand into a hand trap, and they can interact with you. They can get a free Wendy if they want to go Wendy route, or they can throw Ariel into the graveyard and completely cripple your combo. It GG's you. And if they have neither of those, throwing a Beast or Hedgehog is a natural +1 for them, and I don't know if you want to do that. So insta regret if you play against Shaddoll, especially when you're building your combo to make the unbreakable board. Guess what? You're not even going to get there against Shaddoll. I played this over a locals this past weekend. It was devastating. It was just so sad when I got that greedy. It's like, oh, what are the odds that he'll have a Shaddoll monster? Apparently 100%, because I got completely ripped apart. Versus Aleirtt, if they throw the Golden Lord in the graveyard, great. Banish it for your invocation, make Mechaba, it's good. But if they throw any sort of golden land cards into the graveyard, that's no good. That means they got a free setup, and they're guaranteed their Golden Lord being summoned out. So that's not too good on your end. In terms of Tri-Brigade, they can definitely just go into throwing some of the level 1s into the graveyard, or they can throw Nerval or Kit into the graveyard, ultimately getting their Fractal into their hand, giving them a free setup. Like, there's a lot of bad things. So it's just don't activate Zoha unless you have to, because you're just making the game much harder for yourself to play, unless you're guaranteed to build the end board. Fatal Misplay number 2, forgetting that King and Queen has their second effect. The first effects of King and Queen are both related to controlling the field and controlling your opponent's hand. If they add a card while King's on the field, well, King will randomly select one of those cards and send it back into the graveyard. As for Queen is even better because it's a non-targeting send to the graveyard. If your opponent special summons anything from the graveyard, you get to send one of their cards on their side of the field to the graveyard, which is great for controlling some of the back row and anything like that. But the other effects also matter. So if something is, well, sent from the hand or deck to the grave while the Queen is on the field, you get to special summon out from your graveyard a light or dark reptile, and typically you should be summoning out Nalia so that you can add your water lily into your hand, and that would net you 2 cards. And that's how you maintain the advantage while giving your opponent a ton of cards to play with, and that's what allows you to truly grind. Otherwise, you'd be grinding straight into the ground because you're giving your opponent a ton of free pluses as you grind. You're not really grinding, you're really just shaving off your own cards. As for the King, just remember that you get to add any card. If a monster is sent from the field to the graveyard, if your opponent just link summons something while you have the King on the field, just remember to add one of your light or dark reptiles from your deck or graveyard into your hand, and that's how you maintain advantage, and you can set up for the next turn. That's why the King and Queen are super important, to leave them on the board when you can play. Otherwise, what's the point? And to that, Konami, can you please make a light or dark reptile hand trap? That would be great. Fatal Misplay number 3, grinding against your opponent, and the reason why it's bad is because every single cycle that you go through gives your opponent additional advantage. It's really, really bad when you do it against a Shadow player because they get a free summon of their monster even though the effect is negated, summoned through curse. They don't care because they have graveyard-based triggers, and if they send it to the graveyard by a card effect, they get their effect again. So that doesn't really matter. But worse yet, against any deck, the Aleirtt that's going to give them free cards from the graveyard, free monsters in particular, that one hand trap, say they only have 1 Ash or 1 Ghost spell, say goodbye to all your water lilies from that one hand trap. It's just that brutal. In other words, you'll be down only going into 1 rank 8 or maybe 1 rank 4, depending on how you play it out, but that's the limitation of your loop. In other words, it's not doing very much, and it's also giving your opponent a ton of cards to play with. It's brutal. Let's just say that at the very least. And also, just a couple of additional tips here. You have to play more than 1 copy of Aleirtt. You have to play 2 because Ariel can banish it. You have Hakero that can banish it. Invocation that can banish it. There's just natural stuff that can banish one of your key cyclers, and without the key cycler, you can't go back into like the Jaglubian OTK at will because you just lost your ability to cycle, and that means the resources have to come from the deck and not from the graveyard. That's a Fatal Misplay, guys. And don't forget about your normal summon and other free cards that you can summon, such as Darkest Diablos. Very, very useful. A free additional 8 body or maybe a hand rip. Just things that you can do. These are the little things that you need just to keep yourself in the game with this deck because your opponent's just getting free stuff from you. Alright guys, we're now moving on to the chats, but if you guys can take the little time to hit that thumbs up button for me, I would appreciate that. And let's get into this. Okay, so the very first chat that occurs most frequently is actually at the beginning of the combo. It relates to Nunu, the Ogdoadic Remnant. So there's 2 parts to this. It's because, first of all, Nunu can summon herself from the graveyard, and the other one is, well, the lock that you're put under. Remember, if you summon out Nunu using her own effect, according to her card text, you can special summon this card from your graveyard, but banish it when it leaves the field. But also, you cannot special summon monsters except reptile monsters while this card is face up on the field. Now, because it uses the also conjunction, this effect is only applying if it's special summoned from the graveyard using her own effect. If you special summon it using any other means, such as using, say, the Queen, or use the Ogdoadic Water Lily, you are not locked under. So that's something that someone can't chet you on. But in terms of you chetting your opponent, just this reason alone is why you have to run Reptile Echidna and King of the Feral Imps, so that you can unlock yourself from being a Reptile Lock. Because Reptile Lock doesn't feel very good unless you can summon both King and Queen and call it a turn. But usually that's just not enough. And I personally messed this up myself because while under the Reptile Lock, I just summoned out an Aleirtt, and instead of like doing anything crazy, I went into like a Vertanaconda, which is illegal. So this is something that I made a mistake on previously. So make sure that doesn't happen to you, because they're not allowed to go into that Dragoon while this card's on the field from their own effect. So that's number one. And the second thing is messing up the summoning order. Like, I know this habit comes from mostly like Invoke players, because Invoke players, they like to summon out Aleirtt as one of their first moves, because they like to get all of the fusion stuff done before they go into their Nadir Servant to play with the Dogmatica stuff. That's fair. But the thing is, remember that line of the summoning condition of Nunu. This is actually a misplay that could also be an illegal play, depending if like they follow through and make the illegal play with it. If you control no monster, or you control an Ogdoadic monster, you can special summon this card from the graveyard. If you normal summon out the Aleirtt and this card's in the graveyard, you can't summon this card out, which causes, well, a misplay. But if you activate it and summon it onto the field anyway, then that is an illegal play, and that's just improper game state. Luckily, this one can easily be repaired by putting the card back into the graveyard and just take the warning if you get called out on this. So that's one of the biggest chats, because otherwise they messed up, and you gotta capitalize on this. Like, you can't let that stuff go. Oh yeah, I'll just fix your order. No, you made the conscious decision to summon out the Aleirtt. Now you have to live with it. So that's one of the biggest things out there, and just, I would say, be unforgiving when it comes to these little steps, because it's really that important. All right, chat number 2. This is the biggest sus move ever. So it's not reminding your opponent of things they can do when you activate your effects, and this is coming from Aleirtt and Curse. In the automated simulators, not a big problem, because it has reminders telling you, hey, do you want to special summon thing out of your graveyard, or do you want to add a monster from your graveyard? That's great. But in like DB, I've seen it like happen. It's pretty bad, where the guy just doesn't tell them, because it just seems like such a normal card effect when it compared to like dragons. Like, oh, dragons, you just get a bunch of stuff for free. Oh yeah, I use like LP summon from the deck for free. Oh, I use Pisty, I get to summon from the graveyard for free, and your opponent doesn't get anything, and it just seems so natural. However, Ogdoadics and reptiles, well, they don't get that level of advantage. They don't get that favoritism that dragon gets. And so as the Ogdoadic player, you have to remind your opponent that they have stuff that they can do, because it's part of your card effect. Unless they specifically say, I don't care, ignore everything that you say, or they're not paying attention, then maybe you can argue against it, saying like, oh, they didn't want it. And like, the really annoying thing about this is that some people say that they forgot. And dude, this is super sus. You don't forget this. You don't forget that your Aleirtt has such a big disadvantage. Yeah, I wouldn't buy it, because you chose to play the deck. You should know what your cards do, and because of that, I'd probably be a bit more strict. But when, say, you forgot and both players moved on with the game state, what it's likely going to happen, if it was up to me, it would probably be an accepted game state, because first off, these effects to add cards from the graveyard is optional. However, I would believe that the Ogdoadic player would be more at fault, because at the very least, you could read your card to your opponent, and if you don't, that's just super sus. And I don't know how things are going to be ruled against you, but I would definitely try to like appeal against you if that were to happen in real life, saying like, oh, you have to accept the game. So I'm like, hold on a second, you didn't tell me anything. That could also lead to a misrepresented game state, which is well, a much more severe penalty. So just be careful about this number 2, chet, which is not reminding your opponent of things that they can do due to your own card effects. It's such a big one. Sus play number 3, Ogdoadic Water Lily. This one goes both ways. Like, I've seen some people argue that, oh, you needed the 5 names before you activate the Ogdoadic Water Lily, and that is wrong, because this card checks during the resolution, because it states right here, send 1 reptile monster from your deck to the graveyard. Then if you have 5 or more reptile monsters with different names in your graveyard, you can special summon 1 reptile monster from your graveyard, and you can only activate 1 Ogdoadic Water Lily once per turn. You hear that? It has the then clause. Once you send the reptile monster from your deck to the graveyard, then you count. In other words, you typically only need 4 names in the graveyard before you send the last one. Now here's the other chat around, aside from like someone lying to you saying that you need 5, the other issue is not having the proper names. Some people only count the bodies and they completely forget that you need different names in the graveyard to do the summon. Typically that occurs because you want to use the effect of your invocation to banish perhaps one of your snakes, but you also want to summon out the same snake. Typically it's going to be the Nunu that's going to be the root of this particular chet. It's because they send an extra Nunu and they have 2 Nunus and then 3 different names. They can't special summon anything out of their graveyard, and that limitation is what causes some of the issues here. And that's something that you need to be aware of, because the end board will be completely different. That one monster difference is the difference of, well, maybe the full, Dragoon end board, and I guess you also have the Sacred Tree Beast because you got the extra free body. That's probably where we're aiming at in terms of this chet here. So make sure you count after you send, and make sure you count different names for the Ogdoadic Water Lily. Yeah. And finally, we'll close out with Ogdoadic Overlord. I know I've been mixing up the pronunciation, and I'm sorry, guys. I'll try my best to kind of correct myself. But Ogdoadic Overlord, this is a card that a misplay or illegal play occurs from time to time, where you summon an Ogdoadic Overlord and you tell your opponent, oh, it sends everything to the it sends basically all monsters to the graveyard except for the one summoned from the graveyard. So you send all of your opponent's cards, but you activated Curse, and Curse revive one of your opponent's monster. And that's how I miss OTKs from time to time. But sometimes it gets missed and everything gets sent to the graveyard. That is a no-no, and that's a big problem, because you're not supposed to get that OTK, and it usually leads to like, oh, an OTK, and then someone picks up their cards, and then that ends the game. That's a terrible chet, and I don't want you guys to experience it. And speaking of a legitimate scenario where that could be the case, it's against Aleirtt. Eldritch's Golden Lord does not summon itself from the graveyard. I know a lot of people skip that step, and they just go, oh, I send the card to the graveyard, summon my Golden Lord onto the field. That Golden Lord is actually summoned from the hand, because you add it to hand and then you summon it onto the field. That's how it works. So don't mess that up, and just don't get fooled by, taking shortcuts. Something as small as that makes the difference between winning the game or losing. All right. And I don't want anyone to get fooled by that. And that's basically everything you really need to know about Ogdoadics. Yeah, so if you guys have anything that you want to ask or, add, leave it down in the comment section. I would like to read what are your thoughts about Ogdoadics. And that's all I got for this video, guys. If you guys enjoyed this video, learned a thing or two about how to avoid getting chet by this deck, smash the thumbs up button. And please just play with, integrity and honor. I guess honor, or just have good sportsmanship, guys. And if you guys want to see more stuff from MST.TV, like the giveaway stuff, and speaking of giveaway, I guess I'm going to throw this in there. I'm going to throw a full Ogdoadic core. This includes, I guess, 3 of the ultras and basically everything else in here into the giveaway pile for that giveaway stream. Right now, the stream is currently pending to be the last Saturday weekend for me. That's what I'm planning it for. So that's just a pending date. I'll leave you guys with a new announcement to confirm it, but that's all I got. So make sure you guys stay subscribed for that. And it's likely going to be on the Twitch side, because I'm not partnered over there. So I'm not worried about, getting dinged by, DMCA stuff. But anyways, that's all I got for this one. Thank you for watching, guys. You guys are awesome. And I'll see you guys in the next one.